What made King Solomon the wisest and most foolish king? Lessons for every leader today. Have you ever wondered how a man could be called the wisest king in history, yet also be remembered for his mistakes and foolish choices? King Solomon's life is a powerful story of divine blessing, extraordinary wisdom, and human weakness, all intertwined in one remarkable individual. God granted Solomon unparalleled wisdom, a gift that allowed him to judge fairly, govern justly, and achieve incredible feats that shaped Israel and left a lasting legacy. His decisions, writings, and the construction of the temple of the Lord made him a figure revered across nations. Yet beneath this brilliance, Solomon's story carries a cautionary tale, a reminder that wisdom without humility, blessing without obedience, can lead even the greatest to folly. In this video, we will dive deep into the paradox of King Solomon. You'll witness the moments that earned him divine favor, such as the famous judgment of the two mothers, and explore how his accomplishments brought glory to Israel and recognition across the ancient world. But we'll also uncover the subtle choices that led him away from God, how indulgence, pride, and compromises in his heart opened the door to spiritual decline. Solomon's life is not just an ancient story, it is a mirror for us today, showing that the most gifted, the most wise, and the most blessed can still stumble when they stray from God's guidance. By the end of this video, you'll gain insight into both the triumphs and the mistakes of Solomon, learning lessons that are both inspiring and cautionary. You'll understand what made him the wisest king and what made him the most foolish, and how those lessons can apply to your own life. Prepare to see Solomon in a new light, not just as a historical figure, but as a living example of God's blessing, human choice, and the eternal importance of seeking God with humility. Part 1. Solomon sits God-given wisdom. King Solomon's wisdom was legendary, a divine gift that set him apart as one of the most remarkable figures in biblical history. From the very beginning of his reign, it was evident that Solomon was not only a king, but also a man who sought understanding above personal gain. God appeared to him in a dream, asking what he desired. Instead of wealth, power, or long life, Solomon asked for wisdom to govern God's people with discernment, to know right from wrong, and to lead justly. This request reflected humility, a selfless heart, and a desire to serve God and his people faithfully. God was pleased with this prayer, granting Solomon not only unmatched wisdom, but also riches, honor, and renown that extended across nations. Solomon's wisdom was practical, spiritual, and relational. One of the most famous demonstrations of his God-given insight is the story of the two women who came to him, each claiming to be the mother of the same child. Solomon's proposal to divide the child in two revealed the true mother through her selfless love. This judgment illustrated not only intellectual brilliance, but also a deep understanding of human nature, compassion, and the discernment of motives, qualities that only divine wisdom could provide. Beyond judgment, Solomon's wisdom encompassed knowledge of the natural world, administration, diplomacy, and spirituality. He authored Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon, leaving behind literature rich with moral guidance, practical advice, and reflections on life, love, and faith. His wisdom was applied in the governance of Israel, maintaining peace and establishing the kingdom as a prosperous and culturally vibrant nation. Leaders from distant lands recognized his unparalleled understanding, seeking his counsel and marveling at his decisions. Solomon's wisdom also guided monumental projects, such as the construction of the Temple of the Lord, an architectural and spiritual marvel. Every detail, from materials to rituals, reflected a mind aligned with God's purposes. The temple became a central place of worship for Israel, a lasting testament to God's glory, and a tangible expression of wisdom in action. However, wisdom is a gift accompanied by responsibility. Solomon's early life demonstrates that divine understanding, when paired with humility and obedience, leads to extraordinary accomplishments. His discernment, foresight, and ability to apply knowledge wisely set a standard for leadership. True wisdom, Solomon's life teaches us, is not simply knowing what is right, but applying it in alignment with God's will, for the benefit of others, and in service to the divine purpose. Even in his youth, Solomon's decisions reflected a heart that valued God's guidance above personal ambition. He consulted God for direction, applied divine principles in judgment, and sought to balance justice with mercy. His wisdom extended to diplomacy, trade, and administration, establishing Israel as a strong, respected, and prosperous nation. The combination of intellectual acuity, spiritual alignment, and practical governance made Solomon a model of God-centered leadership, showing how divine gifts flourish when used with reverence, humility, and devotion. Yet, this wisdom, no matter how extraordinary, was only effective when coupled with continued obedience. Solomon's early success illustrates the heights one can reach with God's guidance, but it also foreshadows the cautionary lessons of later years, reminding us that wisdom must be nurtured with faithfulness, discipline, and humility to remain intact. Part 2. Solomon sets achievements and glory. Solomon's reign was marked by monumental achievements, reflecting both his divine wisdom and his vision for Israel. One of his most notable accomplishments was the construction of the Temple of the Lord, a magnificent structure that became the spiritual and cultural heart of the nation. The temple was meticulously designed according to God's instructions, adorned with gold and precious stones, and crafted with precision. It became a central place of worship, a symbol of divine presence, and a testament to Solomon's ability to apply God-given wisdom to tangible, lasting projects. Beyond the temple, Solomon's political and economic achievements were extraordinary. He forged alliances through diplomacy and strategic marriages, expanded Israel's influence, and maintained peace with neighboring nations. His reign saw unprecedented prosperity, with thriving trade, infrastructure development, and flourishing cities. Solomon's ability to balance political power with moral leadership demonstrates the practical application of wisdom in governance. He managed resources, cultivated relationships, and guided his people toward both spiritual and material prosperity. Solomon was also an accomplished writer and thinker. His contributions to Scripture, including Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon, reveal a profound understanding of human nature, morality, and the search for meaning. These writings offer insights into daily living, relationships, and the pursuit of God's will. Through his literary legacy, Solomon's wisdom continues to instruct, inspire, and guide believers centuries later. International recognition was another hallmark of Solomon's glory. Leaders from far-off lands, including the Queen of Sheba, visited to witness his wisdom and wealth. They marveled at his judgments, his court, and the splendor of his accomplishments. This global acknowledgement highlights that wisdom, when grounded in God's guidance, transcends cultural and geographic boundaries. Solomon's influence was not confined to Israel. It extended across nations, reinforcing the universal value of divine wisdom applied faithfully. Yet, Solomon's achievements were not solely for personal glorification. His projects, writings, and governance were intended to honor God and establish Israel as a center of faith and culture. The temple, the Proverbs, and the infrastructure projects were all expressions of obedience and reverence. Solomon's early reign illustrates how wisdom, when aligned with God's purpose, can produce extraordinary, enduring impact. Despite these remarkable accomplishments, Solomon's story also carries warnings. His achievements, while magnificent, could not shield him from the consequences of later unwise choices. The very gifts and blessings that elevated him became opportunities for pride, indulgence, and eventual spiritual decline. Understanding both the heights of his accomplishments and the cautionary lessons embedded in his story provides a complete perspective on wisdom, responsibility, and the human heart. Solomon's legacy reminds us that divine wisdom, when embraced with humility and applied faithfully, produces extraordinary results. His achievements reflect the possibilities when one aligns with God's guidance, demonstrating that the combination of divine insight and practical action can transform nations, inspire generations, and leave a lasting mark in history. Yet it also reminds us that wisdom must be continually nurtured with obedience, lest human frailty undermine the blessings entrusted by God. Part 3. The subtle beginnings of foolishness. Even the wisest of men are not immune to human weakness, and King Solomon's life provides a striking illustration of this truth. From the outset of his reign, Solomon displayed unmatched discernment, fairness, and understanding, yet over time, subtle decisions began to erode his wisdom. Initially, these choices seemed harmless or culturally appropriate. His marriages to foreign women were intended as strategic alliances, designed to ensure peace, strengthen Israel politically, and secure international relations. Yet the cumulative effect of these unions gradually influenced his heart, introducing foreign religious practices and ideas that diverted him from wholehearted devotion to Jesus. What began as seemingly minor compromises opened the door to spiritual decline, illustrating how even small lapses in obedience can lead to larger consequences over time. Solomon's indulgence in wealth, luxury, and comfort further contributed to the subtle weakening of his spiritual focus. His palaces were grand, his treasures vast, and his lifestyle increasingly lavish. While these accomplishments reflected skillful administration and national prosperity, they also revealed a shift in priorities. The king, who had once sought wisdom above all, now appeared to seek personal gratification and material pleasure. His attention increasingly turned toward the pleasures of the world, admiration from others, and maintaining an image of grandeur. These gradual shifts demonstrate the insidious nature of subtle foolishness. Even the most gifted can begin to drift when they prioritize worldly indulgence over spiritual integrity. The early signs of Solomon's foolishness also manifested in his interactions with foreign influences. His wives brought with them customs and religious practices that subtly infiltrated the royal household, leading Solomon to tolerate idolatry and pagan rituals. This tolerance, though gradual, marked a turning point in his spiritual journey. It illustrates the danger of letting external influences shape one's heart and decisions, even when surrounded by wisdom and divine blessing. Solomon's example warns believers that knowledge and intelligence alone cannot safeguard the soul from compromise. Continual reliance on Jesus and steadfast obedience are essential. Moreover, Solomon's subtle errors highlight the importance of humility. Wisdom, no matter how profound, is insufficient if it is divorced from humility and accountability. Solomon's early reign demonstrates how unchecked pride and the allure of power, even when paired with extraordinary discernment, can create openings for folly. The very gifts that elevated him, his intellect, insight, and divine favor, could become sources of vulnerability when not tempered with obedience and devotion. Despite these subtle beginnings of folly, Solomon's capabilities remained extraordinary. His decisions continued to reflect brilliance, fairness, and practical understanding. Yet beneath the surface, the seeds of spiritual decline were taking root. These early choices, though seemingly minor, foreshadowed larger consequences that would affect both his life and the future of Israel. Solomon's life teaches that vigilance, discipline, and continuous devotion to God are necessary to maintain wisdom. Even the greatest among us are susceptible to temptation and distraction if we fail to nurture the heart alongside the mind. This period of Solomon's life serves as a mirror for all believers. It illustrates how the combination of human frailty, worldly desire, and subtle compromises can quietly influence the course of one's spiritual journey. Solomon's story challenges us to examine our own priorities, relationships, and daily choices, reminding us that wisdom is not merely the accumulation of knowledge, but the consistent application of God's principles in obedience, humility, and devotion. By reflecting on the subtle beginnings of Solomon's folly, we gain insight into the delicate balance between divine blessing and human responsibility, understanding that even the wisest can falter without steadfast reliance on Jesus. Part 4. Solomon's spiritual decline and consequences. As time progressed, the small compromises in Solomon's heart snowballed into significant spiritual decline. His tolerance of idolatry in his household, the influence of foreign wives, and the prioritization of wealth and luxury over devotion to God marked a turning point in his reign. The man who had once prayed for wisdom to serve God faithfully began to allow personal desires and external influences to dictate his actions. This gradual drift away from obedience demonstrates that even the most gifted and divinely favored individuals are not immune to human weakness. Wisdom must be continually applied, humility maintained, and the heart consistently aligned with God's will, or even the wisest can falter. The consequences of Solomon's decline were not merely personal, they affected the entire kingdom. Although Israel remained strong politically, spiritually the nation began to deteriorate under his leadership. God had bestowed great favor upon Solomon, but as he turned away from wholehearted obedience, the blessings became precarious. The eventual division of the kingdom after his death was a direct result of his failure to uphold God's commands fully. What had been a unified, prosperous nation became fragmented, illustrating the profound impact a leader's spiritual choices can have on an entire people. Solomon's indulgence in materialism, opulent palaces, elaborate treasures, and luxurious lifestyle also contributed to inner emptiness. Despite his wisdom and achievements, he recorded in Ecclesiastes the vanity of worldly pursuits, the fleeting nature of wealth and power, and the futility of life apart from full devotion to God. Here lies a profound lesson. Even the wisest of men recognized that human success, status, and material abundance are meaningless without obedience and reverence toward Jesus. The greatest wisdom and achievements are hollow if disconnected from God's guidance and purpose. Moreover, Solomon's spiritual decline highlights the necessity of continuous accountability. The gifts and wisdom he received from God were not meant to be static. Without vigilance, humility, and sustained obedience, these gifts can be misused or neglected, leading to folly. Solomon's later years reveal the dangerous intersection of privilege, temptation, and complacency. His story serves as a cautionary tale for leaders, believers, and anyone seeking to live faithfully, showing that neglecting the heart and spiritual discipline undermines even the greatest intellect and talent. Yet within Solomon's decline, there remains a message of hope. His reflections, literary works, and candid acknowledgement of life's vanity reveal awareness, introspection, and a desire to align with God's truth. Even in failure, there is opportunity for learning, repentance, and spiritual growth. The lessons from his decline demonstrate that wisdom is not only measured by initial understanding, but by the ongoing commitment to live in obedience, humility, and dependence on God. Solomon's spiritual decline and its consequences provide timeless lessons. They emphasize the delicate balance between divine blessing and human responsibility, the importance of prioritizing God above worldly influences, and the enduring need for humility and discernment. His story invites us to examine our own hearts, recognize the subtle compromises that can lead us astray, and embrace continual reliance on God. Solomon's life is a powerful reminder that wisdom and blessing, without steadfast devotion, can give way to folly, but that through reflection and alignment with Jesus, even mistakes can yield profound understanding and enduring lessons. Part 5. Lessons from Solomon's paradox. King Solomon's life presents one of the most compelling paradoxes in biblical history, a man endowed with extraordinary wisdom, yet also marked by human weakness and folly. From the beginning of his reign, Solomon demonstrated remarkable discernment, empathy, and insight, applying God's guidance to every aspect of leadership. His judgments were profound, his writings inspired, and his governance brought unprecedented prosperity to Israel. Yet alongside this brilliance lay a vulnerability, the human heart, easily swayed by desire, pride, and external influence. The subtle beginnings of Solomon's compromise, marriages to foreign women, indulgence in wealth, and growing attachment to worldly pleasure, eventually opened the door to spiritual decline. Solomon's paradox teaches us that wisdom alone does not guarantee spiritual or moral integrity. Divine gifts are entrusted to serve God and others, not solely for personal gain. The accumulation of wealth, influence, and recognition, while impressive, cannot substitute for humility and obedience. Solomon's indulgence in luxury, his tolerance for idolatry introduced by foreign wives, and his gradual shift away from wholehearted devotion to God, illustrate how even the wisest can falter when the heart drifts from obedience. His story warns that subtle compromises, if left unchecked, can accumulate into significant consequences, not only for the individual, but also for the broader community they lead. Reflection is another critical lesson from Solomon's life. Despite his missteps, Solomon was aware of the limitations of worldly success. In Ecclesiastes, he openly discusses the vanity of wealth, power, and human achievement apart from God, demonstrating profound introspection. His recognition that fulfillment comes not from accomplishments, but from alignment with God's purposes, is a timeless lesson. Even in moments of folly, Solomon retained the capacity for insight, demonstrating that self-awareness, humility, and repentance are essential tools for maintaining a godly life. Solomon's story also highlights the delicate balance between human gifts and divine guidance. Wisdom, leadership, and prosperity can elevate a person, but without humility, vigilance, and reliance on God, these blessings become vulnerable to misuse or neglect. The heart, more than intellect, determines the trajectory of one's life. Solomon's experience reminds us that spiritual discipline, continuous prayer, accountability, and moral integrity are essential to preserve the blessings God provides. His life teaches that obedience, humility, and devotion must accompany wisdom to achieve lasting impact and avoid the pitfalls of folly. For modern believers, Solomon's paradox offers practical and spiritual lessons. We are reminded to steward the gifts God has entrusted to us with care, to prioritize obedience over ambition, and to reflect regularly on our motivations and influences. Success and wisdom are not ends in themselves. They are tools to serve God's purpose. The combination of brilliance and human weakness in Solomon's life serves as both inspiration and caution. It encourages us to embrace wisdom with humility, exercise discernment in every decision, and remain vigilant against the subtle allure of pride, indulgence, or compromise. Ultimately, Solomon's paradox demonstrates that the measure of true wisdom is not only knowledge or achievement, but the consistent application of that wisdom in alignment with God's will. It is a life lived with humility, devotion, and obedience, even amidst great blessing and power. His story reminds us that the greatest gifts can become points of vulnerability if the heart drifts from God, and that the lessons of triumph and failure are intertwined, offering guidance for every believer striving to live faithfully. Conclusion. King Solomon's life leaves us with a profound and enduring message. Wisdom, success, and blessing are precious gifts, but they are accompanied by responsibility, humility, and vigilance. He was granted unparalleled insight, built the temple of the Lord, authored lasting literature, and led Israel to prosperity. Yet he also faltered, demonstrating that even the wisest and most blessed are vulnerable to human weakness, indulgence, and spiritual compromise. His story illustrates the delicate interplay between divine blessing and human choice, showing that knowledge and achievement must always be anchored in obedience to God. Solomon's triumphs and failures together reveal that wisdom is more than intelligence. It is discernment applied with humility and a heart aligned with God's purposes. Material wealth, influence, and recognition are only meaningful when paired with devotion, integrity, and service. The subtle compromises in Solomon's life and their consequences serve as timeless reminders for modern believers. Success without obedience is hollow, brilliance without humility is fragile, and human insight alone cannot replace reliance on God. The paradox of Solomon inspires and warns simultaneously. It challenges us to seek wisdom from God, to reflect on our choices and priorities, and to remain steadfast in our devotion. Even the most gifted can stumble, but through awareness, humility, and alignment with Jesus, lessons can be learned, and spiritual growth can continue. Solomon's life is a call to integrate intellect with obedience, achievement with faithfulness, and blessing with responsibility, providing a roadmap for believers striving to live wisely, faithfully, and fully aligned with God's will.